Hi, lovely to meet you. Could you tell me a bit more about yourself?
I'm Wassim Dbouk. I'm a Marine and Maritime Policy Research Fellow at the Southampton Marine and Maritime Institute. And I also work with the Public Policy Unit at the University of Southampton, where we aim to support with increasing the policy impact of the research that's being conducted at the university. But with my role at the Southampton Marine and Maritime Institute and my background in maritime law, I focus on projects and supporting academics that have expertise in the marine and maritime fields.
Oh wow, yeah, and that's something I think is really important nowadays. Sort of bringing that science into the policy is something that we're seeing a lot more of these days. So,
I think absolutely. I mean, especially now with COP26 right around the corner, and the recent changes in the world. I mean, climate change is just changing the landscape completely. There's so much more research to do, so many gaps to fill, and evidence for the research community to provide policymakers, and it's becoming more and more crucial for policymakers and industry and academic players to work together in bringing solutions to the problems that we face as a society.
Tell me about the Commonwealth Futures Climate Research Cohort. What does it involve?
The cohort basically is a group of academics, early career researchers that are based across the Commonwealth universities. And we come from different backgrounds. The point is for us to train this cohort through workshops about how we could make our research more impactful, but also how we could bring our different perspectives and different backgrounds, different scientific and research backgrounds together to bring forward solutions that accelerate action against climate change.
Wow, yeah, and I particularly like the bit there about sort of including different perspectives. I think that's so important to sort of provide that holistic approach to policy and management. So that sounds like a really interesting thing you're doing there. How did it feel to be selected as part of the cohort? And how are your expertise contributing to the partnership and their work around climate change?
When I saw this opportunity and the focus on research, on the research side of it, rather than focus on just increasing the impact, but focusing on how you would conduct your own research, how would you would develop this flexibility of understanding other disciplines and really finding the common grounds of how we could work together to propose solutions, and also just expanding my network in terms of the background of my connections and what sort of areas they would specialize in. That's what pushed me mainly to join that cohort. And of course, I'm very keen on producing solutions and actually making them impactful, making them having a real tangible outcome out of research. And that's something that's that's essential in the new generation of researchers. Let's say we've had a lot of action in the past around climate change that didn't lead anywhere, a lot of research, a lot of scientific evidence that didn't lead anywhere, and we really need to focus on building these skills, basically bridging research and policymakers and getting things done.
So increasing that network, that's something I think is really important. And would you say that's sort of the key that's maybe been missing, or something that's, something that's really important going forward?
Absolutely.
To providing that real change?
Absolutely. I think apart from researchers working closely with industry actors and policymakers, I think we could do a lot of an effort working together better as well as academics, and maybe putting our egos aside and thinking about what we want to achieve, the good that we can bring with putting our skills into use. And it's easier said than done, I think, to think outside of the box, outside of your comfort zone, outside of the area that you're used to. I mean, I come from a very social science background, and research in law is very different to research in your area, for example, where it's much more scientific. When a lot of times you're going on site, you're collecting data, you're working with other researchers. It's very different when it comes to law. And it's important for us to recognize that there's an effort, there's a role that we can do as researchers and developing our skills, rather than just trying to blame it on others, on the policymakers for not taking what we're saying seriously. So we can improve from our side. Yeah.
And a lot of issues as well are multifaceted, so they need like researchers, different stakeholders from all fields to work together, because it's never just sort of, it never concerns one group individually, it concerns everybody. So
I can't agree more, honestly, can't agree more. And I think that's maybe what I mean by we can do more, because as a policymaker in the end, you want to be presented with evidence that's comprehensive, that tackles the problem from different, makes it feasible. So let's give an example about decarbonization of shipping, which is a topic of great interest to me. You can do research and develop technologies around and identify green fuels that you could use, like alternative fuels that you could use. But in the end, if that doesn't make commercial sense for the industry, it wouldn't be taken on board. So you don't just want to have people with expertise around fuels or like hydrogen or batteries or whatever. You need also people who would think about it from the economic side.
From all the other perspectives to make sure it's actually viable in all ways. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's what's going to be more attractive for policymakers. They're going to look at this evidence and be like, okay, wow, this covers the whole picture. This makes sense. It answers some of the questions that I might have, some of the hurdles that I can anticipate bringing this forward. It just makes my life a lot easier, so I can take it on board and do things. That's what's going to produce action.
Tell me a little bit about your role here at the University of Southampton and the work of the Public Policy and the Marine and Maritime Institute.
So I actually joined Public Policy Southampton before I joined the Southampton Marine and Maritime Institute. I joined PPS the final year of my PhD, and it was the period where I was finalizing my thesis, going through corrections. I had more capacity to do work, and I was working with academics across university in supporting them in various activities, creating policy engagement opportunities for them, highlighting them for them, supporting them with engaging with the UK government and UK Parliament, most notably through responses to calls for evidence that are regularly launched by the various departments and committees of the Parliament, but also working with them on different projects, research projects. These topics were clearly outside of my scope, but that's exactly what I wanted to do at that point, just to gain that flexibility and just allowed me to get to know a lot of people at the university, first of all, a lot of academics, what they're doing, the impact that we could have as a university on a regional level and on a national level and on an international level. And it was at the back of me being awarded my PhD that I applied for a position within the Southampton Marine and Maritime Institute. I work on supporting academics working on projects. I contribute in some research projects. I also support PhD students in just building their skills and getting more and more engaged in these sort of projects and attending policy workshops, producing policy briefs. There's all sorts of outputs that we work on, to be honest, and it's a really dynamic and exciting environment to be in, and there's so much potential to what you can do. There's so much going on. There's so much knowledge at the university. It's really exciting, to be honest, and I'm very happy to be here.
So your research also looked at marine environmental law. I know you were saying you were doing that sort of before you got into all of this. What led you to work in that field to begin with?
I come from Lebanon, and I came to Southampton in 2014 to do my master's and my LLM in maritime law. And back then my interest was very much around trade, international trade. So Lebanon is a small country at the east of the Mediterranean. We rely heavily on importation and exportation, and I wanted to become an expert in that, basically a legal expert in that. So when I came to Southampton, these are the modules that I focused on, basically international trade, marine insurance, things around it, around trade in general. After I finished my master's, there was an opportunity for a studentship to come and do a fully funded PhD in maritime law, and that's where I started thinking about what sort of topics I would want to work in for the long term. Back then, there was the discovery of major oil fields in the east of the Mediterranean, and my thinking was that, well, this is going to be the future. If I want to bring something back to my community, this is the area for me to specialize in. One of the biggest issues faced is the environmental side of things. So how do you manage to extract oil and gas and build the community, build the society, but at the same time by protecting the environment and making sure that it doesn't deteriorate the biodiversity. And of course in Lebanon there's also there are political complications there with our neighboring countries, and the whole region is a bit complicated. That's what drove me initially. Back then I was really interested in the Deepwater Horizon incident, which was the biggest oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, basically. And it just triggered a lot of reviews of the way we do things. Mm-hmm. Doing my survey, my understanding of the whole landscape, it felt there was a lot of unfairness in the world and the way that we do things. It just seemed to me that in some places of the world where environmental standards don't matter as much, and you just you lower those standards for the sake of lowering the prices and getting more economic benefit out of it. Whereas in other countries in the world, you get completely the opposite. You just increase the standards so much at the expense of raising the costs. I mean, well, we end up forgetting that we all live in the same planet, and if there's going to be a spill off the coast of Nigeria, maybe it would have implications in the UK on the long run. So that was my deep motivation there. I wanted to focus on my analysis of public international law and find a solution, interpretation of the developments that would apply globally.
It's interesting you say about the sort of Deepwater Horizon spill. I think there are sometimes those moments in life where you do have those inner reflections, and it sort of steers you on a slightly different path. It just kind of sounds like what's happened.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it feels like this is how I got to PPS and then the SMMI as well. When I saw the opportunity for the studentship and I considered it for a bit, it was like, no way. I mean, I don't want to be an academic. I don't want to be involved in academia in any way. I want to be a lawyer. That was my goal, and that was my dream back then. But I just dropped the resistance and went with the flow. And
it's amazing how once you have that open mind, how you just find that things start to come together a bit more. So yeah, that's really interesting. And finally, what do you hope will be accomplished at the upcoming COP26 Summit?
We will have some representation from the university at COP26. And that's a great thing to have, honestly, for us to use that platform to showcase some of the great work that's been done here. And to answer your question, I think in general, in terms of the relationship between academia and policymaking, it's usually academics would provide evidence and support of what policymakers are looking at, the gaps that they have. But at the same time, I think academics have a role to play in pointing out gaps, bringing things to the attention of policymakers as areas that they haven't considered and they need to be considered. It just allows for a more forward-looking approach to things. And of course, like I said, things are changing dramatically, and they're going to continue to change dramatically. And if we don't adopt a long-term forward-looking approach to things, we might end up causing more harm than we're actually dealing with. So what I hope that we would produce out of COP26 is just increasing this awareness in the minds of those that could make a change, engaging with them, having conversations and with the right people, building this relationship further, allowing us to be used as a trusted source of information for policymakers whenever they want to take action to face the various challenges created by climate change. COP26 is basically going to be an assessment of how far behind we are. That's what it's a more realistic description to what I think is going to come out of it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It's been absolutely great to meet you and hear all about your amazing work.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely. Thank you.
No worries.